new episode of A Blind Insight with me, Simon Hill, and my right-hand man, Billy Spakeman. Billy's been a while, actually, since we did one of these, so how have you been?
Yeah. All right, not too bad. Busy with all charity stuff and stuff like that. So I've had a quick read of the stuff that you're going to discuss today, which is quite involved and interesting, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to pick out a few bits, but I just thought it helpfully puts a bit of context into the what we've been talking about the last couple of episodes. But one of the reasons that it's been a while since we've done one is because, unfortunately, I've had a gremlin in my throat for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I think I've got rid of it. But if I start croaking again, then I trust you'll step in while
we will, yeah. Back. And we better tell them you were a guest on the Throttles as well, Throttles Club, which is Tuesdays at 4:00. Norman and Bob. And you're a guest on the one that's going out at the moment at 4:00 on a Tuesday, didn't you?
Yes, did that yesterday. That was good. Another, in fact, I talked a bit on there about some of the things I'm going to throw in today. But yeah, obviously, Albion is another hobby and passion of mine. So yeah, it was good to get involved in that.
Yeah. So what we're going to do today then, Si?
Yeah. So as I said, I thought I'd start off with talking a bit more about the issues facing blind and partially sighted people with finding and keeping employment, because a few weeks ago there was a You Gov poll published, and the results of which, some of them even took me by surprise, to be honest. So I'm going to share those. Then I'm going to talk a bit about the Unite for Access campaign, which has been taking place over the last couple of weeks, and the focus of that is to improve access to sports facilities for people with disabilities. We'll have a discussion about a comeback common sense topic, which I'll share one of my gripes about modern life, and amongst that we'll play a bit of music. So. It was interesting. The people may have heard or seen it was a few weeks ago now, but the government published a plan, as they put it, to improve the lives of disabled people in this country. And the long and short it was, there was a lot of mention of more money being spent on employment advisors in job centres and all manner of other stuff. But what jumped out to me about it most of all was the results of the YouGov poll, which says that only 1 in 4, at present, only 1 in 4 blind or partially sighted people are in employment, which I knew it was low, but I didn't quite think it was that low. So that was an interesting one.
I mean, that's like 25% then, isn't it?
Yeah,
which is incredible, really.
Which I haven't got the numbers here, but but we're talking. It's in the millions, or it's more than 1 million of people who are registered blind or partially sighted. So, that puts it into some kind of context.
So, Simon, would they then experience the same problems that you had, and that's why, or is it just too complicated for employers to amend what they normally do for partially sighted or blind people, and they just can't? Is it too costly, or they can't be bothered?
I think it's a combination of everything. I think number one, let's be clear. I know and have met a number of blind or partially sighted people that don't seem to be that bothered about getting a job and seem to survive and be quite happy with their benefits and or support from family or whatever it may be, and so that's their prerogative. So those numbers have to be taken into account. And I think there's a bit which I'm going to come on to as well in a minute, but there's a big issue with the communication between businesses, the people who get a business registered or qualified as disability confident, but then that information and knowledge being passed on to the people doing the recruiting. So, I can sit down in front of somebody at an interview, and as has happened, one of the first things they ask me is, you're blind, how are you going to use a computer? So, what the business says, oh yes, we're disability confident, we will make reasonable adjustments, etc. But clearly, that individual who's interviewing me and is ultimately going to decide whether I get past this stage, they haven't been given that knowledge. So, I mean, it said, according to the You Gov polls, 48% of businesses didn't have accessible recruitment processes. So that alone, that's nearly half of employers that I might apply to, won't even, basically I'd struggle to even get through the recruitment process, let alone anything else. And then 47% said they didn't know where to find funding or support, such as from Access to Work and the RNIB and so on. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know with that one. I mean, in this day and age, is it really that hard to go on the internet and find things? Or
I mean, I'd say that would be a bit of a lame excuse, isn't it? Really, you've only got to Google something; it'll come up, won't it?
Well, we live in a day and age where we're absolutely swamped with information. So I don't buy that one, to be honest. I think that's poor. But that's obviously what they say. And then even worse than that, 25% of respondents says they would not be willing to make workplace adjustments or employ a blind or partially sighted person. So, that in itself, okay, it's less, but it's still too much.
I mean, there's the physical thing, obviously, making sure that it's easy to get around the workplace. But how costly is it to amend a system to I don't know, incorporate a blind person? Is it just a program that they could put in individually that they could download, or would they have to, I don't know, pay out loads of money to get something done?
Again, it depends. The problem is that, and this is in a minute. I've finally seen what's required for a business or employer to become or claim to be disability confident, and it's answered one of my questions really, which is essentially in this day and age, you can go online. Screen reader software is just a program you download, the same as anything else. So that's not the issue. The issue that's not expensive. Buying it in the first place costs a few £100, but like I say, that's what Access to Work will fund. But the issue then comes that what are the systems that the employers and businesses use? I mean, we constantly hear stories about IT systems that have cost millions of pounds, and then people say they're no good, and so there is a whole raft of IT systems being used which don't work well for anybody, let alone if you're trying to use a screen reader. So the problem comes is there's no consistency across from employer to employer as to what systems are used. And I mean, like for example, as I've said, I spent a number of years working in a bank, so I use certain systems there. But I know, having been to other banks, that you go into them and they use different systems. So even within the same industries, there's such inconsistency, and money it would cost money, but screen readers can be programmed to be taught what to do with the system, basically, which does take time and money. But in the end, all of that could be avoided if, in the first place, employers and businesses only used systems which had been checked and signed off as being accessible.
Would the system have to just be incorporated in, say, the PC that you'd use or whoever was employed use, or would it have to be a general thing across the board for the business?
It can be done either. I mean, in this day and age, of course, with the working from home or working remotely boom, as happened since COVID, many people now have their own laptops for work. So whether they're working in the office or at home, they just take their laptop with them. So the jobs I've had before, it was a case of, I had my own desktop computer on my desk at work, and that was connected to the network, the same as everybody else's. But my software was just installed on my
PC.
profile, if you like. So when I logged in, that was there. But of course, these days, you can just have it installed on your laptop, and then if you plug it in, connect to the internet, whether you're in the office or at home, and then you've got whatever software it is you need all contained within that, and and that can be taken with you wherever you need to go. So it's like anything. It's about. It doesn't need to affect basically what I think you were getting at. It doesn't need to affect or interfere with anybody else's work or. And then you, as you mentioned, there are in terms of the mobility issues and getting around the place. I mean, for instance, where I worked, it's just simple things like you just keep the same desk, and that desk is in a location that's easy to get to, so you don't have to make your way around other people's chairs and belongings and whatever else might be going on. It's straightforward for you to get out to the toilet or the kitchen or wherever. So yeah, and then it's just a bit about people being mindful, not to not to leave things in your way, or which really surely isn't too much to ask.
Here's a scenario then. So you're, I'm just thinking here about. So you're at an interview and you've sailed through the interview, and then they say, "Oh, but we can't really afford the 200 quid for the software to put on your system." And then you turn around and you say to them, "Well, I'll tell you what, if I've sailed through the interview and it's 200 quid, then deduct £5 per month off my wages and I'll pay for it." And you throw it back at them. What do you think would happen then?
I honestly don't know, but
No?
but I mean, but like I say, that like I say, 'cause that's what access to work is there to do. But I mean, I've sort of not been talking about it for, I didn't want to jeopardise myself, but I think we're past that stage now. But that kind of scenario, that is kind of happening to me at the moment, where I finally passed an interview last summer for a job with the DWP themselves, and yet we're now in March, so we're 6, 7, 8 months on, and basically I've had a right palaver, and they're now basically saying that the job I applied for, the systems aren't accessible. They haven't discussed it with me. They're not. So I'm saying, well, what are we talking here? Are we talking none of them work, or it just needs a bit of tweaking? Who's tested it? Who have they asked? And now they're looking at other jobs that I could do, and saying how far will I be willing to travel, etc. And I'm thinking, well, I applied for a job, I got a job. I applied for that job because that was a job that I thought I could do and was wanted to do. But now I'm just completely in limbo because they.
Well, they hold the calling cards really, because they can make it as difficult as possible. So in the end, you say, "Well, it just ain't feasible for me to do it," can't they?
Well,
but in a sense that it's, we're trying our best to try and help you out, but you're not complying with what we've offered you. The job is in 2 minutes from your home. This one's 4 hours from your home, but we're offering you a job.
Well, this is it, and it's it's reading between. At the end of the day, and this is the problem, and you've got it's a problem because they haven't at this point given you a contract, so you've got no rights as an employee because you're not one, and then you have to. You kind of feel like that you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But you want to stand up and make a fuss about it, but at the same time you think, and I've had this over the last few months. You're sending emails. You wanted to speak to somebody, no one's getting back to you, and so you end up saying, this is my life here. It's my future, my financial situation. I'm sitting here thinking I've got. 6 months ago, I thought I had a job coming. Now I've got no idea, and what really sort of riles me is they almost have the attitude of they're doing you a favour.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They can put it across that it's you who's the problem because of you're saying, well, I can't really travel 4 hours, and I can't really.
Yeah,
What I mean?
We offered you, and like and like I've said to them now. I said, well, at the end of the day, in this day and age, whatever, because this is the problem as well. As an outsider, you don't know what systems they use, what systems work. So I've said, well, if whatever systems do work, surely then there's a way in this day and age that I can either, no matter where the office or department happens to be, if it's in London, if it's in Edinburgh, wherever it may be, surely there's a world that I can do the job from home or in the Birmingham office. But I'm using, but if that system works for me, then that's all I need.
Yeah.
But so it's, there's enough obstacles, but then they don't seem to use a bit of thinking to remove the ones that really don't need to be there.
Yeah. And really, it's brownie points for them, aren't they? If they employed you in terms of ticking boxes, it's a brownie point, isn't it? So you'd think they'd do all they could to employ somebody who was partially sighted, blind, disabled, whatever.
The trouble is that, and this is why, in my opinion, it needs to be broken down into every individual disability, so we know exactly what's going on. Because in terms of numbers, the phrase disability now covers so many things. So yes, an employer may employ whatever quota of disabled people, but not one of those people will be blind or partially sighted. They're people who have got, they might just need a chair with a thicker cushion, or an armrest for their keyboard, or all this manner of things which counts towards them doing the job and ticking the box, as you say. But it doesn't help the likes of me, because we're not, none of that equation or that scoring system, if you want to call it that, needs to include us. They can still achieve what they need to keep the powers that be off their backs, but without worrying about the people with visual impairments. Because I don't like to just say, this is wrong. I try to offer what needs to be done to put it right or make it better, because if you don't tell people what needs to be done, then you can't expect problems to be solved. But basically, what I found most interesting was regarding the disability confidence scheme. So if you look around at job adverts, pretty much any job advert you see will say we're a disability confident employer. If you need reasonable adjustments, let us know, and we'll do all we can to accommodate the recruitment process. But to meet the first requirement, there's 3 levels currently. The first one is a disability confident committed employer, it's called, and in order to get that badge, if you like, you just have to meet a few criteria, but none of those involve the technology you use. So in other words, you can get that badge, but you haven't addressed any of the issues to make sure your computer systems are accessible. So and then to get to the second level, which is disability confident, I was amazed to find that essentially is, it's referred to as a self-assessment. So in other words, as an employer, you can assess yourself against certain guidelines, and if you decide you've met them, you can say, yeah, we've met them. And now who checks on that, I don't know, but that seems bizarre and ridiculous. So my way of thinking is that what needs to be done is there shouldn't be different levels of disability confident. An employer should either be classed as disability confident or not. There shouldn't be any sort of halfway house. And one of the criteria that they have to meet in order to get that disability confident status is their technology and computer systems has to have been checked and signed off as being accessible for screen readers and magnification software, etc., by an expert or registered company such as there's Blazey's one, but or the RNIB as the National Blind Charity. So in other words, in order to get that disability confident status, it's known that their technology all works. So when the likes of me come along, if they offer me a job, I'm not sat here 6 months later with everybody scratching their heads because their computer systems don't work for me. And so that's the whole disability confident criteria needs to be tightened up and made much stricter, in my view.
Do you think that the knowledge of most employers, I mean, the people who do the interviews and, I presume they're HR and people like that, have got no real broad knowledge of how vast disability is? They just think, this is the route we take, and we take it regardless of what the disability is.
Yeah, well, like I say, I mean, it depends on how. I mean, in the bigger organisations, you can just imagine it. They've got, the HR department or whatever. They are the ones that do all the forms or the box ticking to qualify to say, oh yes, we can now say we're disability confident. But like I say, they're not the ones doing the recruiting. So for whatever reason, if they don't then, pass on that knowledge to the people doing the recruiting, they still look at me or anybody with a disability and are falling over themselves because they don't know, how they should approach it or what to do with us, basically. So that's, at the end of the day, if you're an employer, it's the people on the front line interviewing people and deciding whether they give us the job or not. They're the ones that need to just be judging you on how you performed at the interview or your application, not, this person was good but they're blind, how what we're going to do with them. Oh no, that sounds a bit too much trouble, let's give it give it to somebody else, because at the end of the day that they don't owe you any favours. They're not interested in my life or what my financial situation is. I'm just one of however many applicants. So why wouldn't they just make their life easier and just push me to one side and give the job to someone that doesn't need all this extra work?
Do you know if the figures that are in there with regard to partially sighted and blind people are more or less than other disabilities in terms of employment?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'd be interested to know that one. I mean, you tend to find that most disabilities have their sort of own particular charities. So I dare say that the RNIB do their research, and then other charities likewise. But it would be very interesting to know.
To see, wouldn't it, what the percentages were in other. Say for somebody who was wheelchair bound, for argument's sake, what percentage are in work? It would be really interesting, wouldn't it?
But I've talked about a lot for now for 2 and a bit episodes, but I just wanted to, because I thought that it's easy to sit here talking, but some numbers sort of quantify it for people. So, interesting. And again, if anybody listening wants to share their experiences, good or bad, with me, then please do, because it's there are obviously some blind or partially sighted people in work, but not as many as there should be.
No, and also if they want to be a guest on your show, they've only got to get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can sort that out without a doubt. Shall we carry on?
Yeah, let's move on. Some people may have heard, particularly if you've been to football matches or sporting events over the last couple of weeks, about the Unite for Access campaign, which is a campaign run every year by Level Playing Field, and this is one of the trailers they've put out to publish what they're doing.
Picture this: the roar of a crowd, the tension building, the electrifying moment your team scores the winning goal. Pure joy, right? But for many football fans, barriers can shut them out of that experience. In the UK, nearly 1 in 4 people, that's 16 million, have a disability. And over 70% of those disabilities are non-visible.
Football is naturally inclusive. That seat that you sat on, you can be anyone.
For most people, I'm the first blind person they've ever met. I use that as an opportunity to inform them what I get out of the game and what I get out of life.
Living as a disabled person in this society can actually be quite disabling, quite isolating. Football clubs can have a role in integrating people into their communities.
There's so much that football does for the world. Educates, it entertains. football touches every part of society.
It's about solidarity amongst people from all different groups, from all different walks of life.
Find out how you can contribute to a more inclusive matchday experience for everyone by supporting Level Playing Field, the national charity advocating for greater access and inclusion for all disabled sports fans, through its Unite for Access campaign. Unite for your team, unite as a fan, let's unite for access.
Great, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure I've mentioned before on here, so I'm now, I've ended up as a chairperson of the All Access Albion group, which is a group that we created with West Bromwich Albion to improve the matchday experience for supporters with a disability. So, for example, the game against Coventry on Friday night was our Unite for Access fixture, and we managed to get in place for that British sign language. So when the players' names were read out at the start of the match on the screen, there was somebody signing them for the deaf and hard of hearing people.
Oh, wow.
So that's, a big, because they, things that are written on the screen, but they don't get to hear, things that are read out. So we've got that in place now, and that'll be the case now for all the home matches. So, and we'll hopefully build on that and get more things or more signing provided. So that obviously brings them, something that most people take for granted, but just that little thing can make them more included. And then, for instance, it was interesting because something I had never really thought about, but we've had a gentleman come into the group who's been campaigning for things to be done to help people living with dementia going to football.
Oh, well, and I do know that the Baggies have got a dementia group, and John Home looks after it, doesn't he?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to be able to put some things in place to support people and their relatives who want to come to football but are living with dementia, to help them make the experience as stress-free as possible. So yeah, it's just generally about a bit of thought, thinking outside the box, and a bit of effort. Yes, that is the way. Things do cost money, but more often than not, you can raise those funds one way or another. But it's just all about remembering that some people can feel excluded or worried about coming to football, especially people who maybe have come to the world of disability or developed a health condition later in life. So they've spent 20, 30, 40 years going to football, and then all of a sudden they think, I don't think I can anymore because of this. But usually, they can. They're just not aware of the support and adaptions that are in place these days. And so it's and with the Level Playing Field campaign, it's not just about football; it's about all sporting venues. So whether you're into your cricket or your rugby or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's. Do
you think football as such is leading the way in terms, because it seems? I mean, I know the Baggies are really proactive, aren't they? From a community point of view, from getting involved in all those things, and I don't know whether it's because football shouts about it and you read about it more in the paper. You don't read as much with other sports, do you? Get involved in these sort of things?
No, I think it's possibly a sort of a two-way thing. I mean, the numbers. I mean, they say football's supposed to be the most popular sport, in the UK, more than rugby and others. So maybe that's partly to do. But I think it's partly as well that people think that if we've got to pick a place to show off what we're doing, we'll do it through football because that's the. So it's kind of a bit of both, that people think it's the biggest platform, so they use it. But I mean, personally, I don't go to. I'm not into rugby or cricket, so I couldn't really comment on. But I'm sure those clubs have their foundations, like the Albion has its foundation, and I think that's where a lot of it's come from in recent years. Clubs now, by and large, all have a foundation or a community program, which focuses on doing things to help the community, and one of those things is getting disabled people involved in sport and playing sport, and so of course that then feeds into they go to the matches and the stadium, and then it all sort of ends up tying in together.
So say you're at the Baggies and you're at the game. Do you have a commentary that you listen to, or do you just take in the game as the person next to you?
No, yeah. So for me, it having a commentary or not makes or breaks the game for me. I'm sure some people, I've known some people who have a budding commentator who goes with them and is happy to do the commentary for them. But so the clubs now, so as with the Albion, they provide a commentary that you can listen to at the ground, or of course you've usually got the option of local radio commentary. It's I always have a commentary in one way or another, and that's how I follow the game.
Yeah, I mean, it must be incredible, really. Do you know how many partially sighted and blind people go to the Baggies? Or
I don't know specifically blind and partially sighted. I believe in terms of on its books, if you like, the club has something like 300 and something disabled supporters.
Really?
But I suspect it's probably more than that. But that they're just the ones who gave permission to receive marketing emails and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a large percentage of the fan base.
Yeah, and where does this scheme originate from? From the government, or is it from the sporting bodies?
The Unite for Access campaign is Level Playing Field, so they're a charity, so it's their campaign, and they I'm not sure where they access their funding from, etc. I dare say some of that comes from the government or sporting bodies such as the FA. But yeah, so that they do their bit nationally, and then in terms of us, for example, at All Access Albion, we're sort of just starting, so we're hoping to get a bit of funding or assistance from the Albion Foundation, for example. But yeah, I mean, there's also things like the National Lottery offer funds for things, and so it's just about knowing where to look, and you've got to put bids in and all the rest of it. So it's a bit of a palaver, but yeah, it'll. I think the government sort of push it out to the various sporting bodies, and but it's about initiative from everybody. It's about the clubs on the ground wanting. It's like everything that they have to want to do it. It's all very well putting guidelines and making funds available, but ultimately it's down to the people at the clubs wanting to make that difference.
Yeah.
Oh, come back, common sense. Oh, send me a postcard from wherever you go. Tell me what it's like there, I really want to know. And the world's gone insane ever since you disappeared. Hey, common sense, how I wished you were here. Hey, common sense, yeah, I wish you were here.
Come back, common sense. For this time, I'm going to have a whinge about what strikes me as I don't understand why it is that if you're flicking through your TV channels these days, whether you have Sky or Freeview or any of them really, and and there's something like several hundred, or and when if they try and sell you a package, they say, oh yes, you've got over 200 channels, this, that and the other. But I can't help noticing as I'm flicking through that you've got the same programme on more than one channel at the same time.
Yeah, I say that I've got council telly because I've got the normal 5 channels, and every time they phone up, I'll say, no, I don't want it, but it'll give you this, and I go, but I don't want it, council telly's enough for me, and everything else is just, ITV 4+1 or so-and-so +2, and you just think it's just filling up channels, isn't it?
But surely, in terms of they talk about costs and everything, but surely then just have less. If you've not got if you're having to duplicate content on more than one of your channels, you've clearly not got enough.
Yeah.
So just have less channels and fill it up with newer content. And because why? You're flicking through. You see the same program 2 or 3 times, and it's like, so I'm paying for these, so many channels, but yet. And then, of course, they justify that, but we've got to put the price up because we've added this and the other. Well, why are you adding more?
Yeah, I don't want it. I ain't asked you to put it on for me. And there's channels like music channels get me because there's one particular one, and I love 60s stuff, and I think it's called Hippie Tunes. But whenever you put it on, it's exactly the same thing that must be on a loop because you just think, well, that was on last night and that was on the night before. And they never seem to change it. It's incredible, really.
I'd love to have the job of one of these schedulers or whatever they call it, because I think it's so easy. You just and it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong. A classic example is I love Only Fools and Horses. I could watch it to death. But if you happen to watch, you won't have it then. But people that have got Sky or whatever and watch Gold, pretty much every weekend, all they show is Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah.
And I think
morning till night.
But even worse than that, you think even though even if it's a program with so many episodes, they show about 3 or 4 and then start it again. So you think, for goodness sake, if you're going to show it all day, at least just let more episodes play. Don't pick 2 or 3 episodes and just put them on repeat for the whole day.
It's just that in really, I mean, I love BBC News, not the one that's on at 6 o'clock, but the one that's on BBC News. But it changes. They just change the person who's telling you the news every half an hour, and it's the same lot of news. They tell you again, and I think, so this is on for 24 hours a day, and I mean, obviously they'd have an update towards the end of the day, but it's exactly the same thing. You're just changing the presenters.
Well, I couldn't. I always thought that sort of job, whether it's Sky, any sort of 24, would drive me mad.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it for like an 8-hour stint and constantly repeating the same
news. And I'm sure when they say, and now we'll go to the weather, they record that once and then they just repeat it at the end of every half an hour because he says exactly the same stuff, or she says exactly the same stuff. So and you think, well, they can't hang about like for 14 hours and just to do the weather every half an hour, can they? Yeah, it's really strange. I totally agree with you with the TV. I just think it's ridiculous, the number of channels.
So there we are, some sobering numbers, I would say, telling us about how many blind or partially sighted people are in and out of work. Hopefully this new plan from the government will do something to address the issue. But as I say, in my opinion, until the requirements to become disability confident are changed and tightened up and include a requirement to have all systems tested and signed off as accessible for screen reading and magnification software, then I fear we're going to come up against this obstacle again and again. But let me know about your experiences and your thoughts. Contact me by email, simonhill_6@hotmail.com. And as we said, if you would be happy to join us for a chat on the show to tell us about your experiences, good or bad, then do let us know, and we would look forward to hearing your story. So hopefully it won't be too long before the next show this time. But until then, all I can say is try and stay sane.